Now, I know you have all seen mostly all of the games that I have created, and my newest project, of course, Contra Force, that is also in development. But maybe I thought you guys would like to see a bunch of games that I started, but I never actually finished, or they're just put on the back burner. Whether or not I get back to them in the future, I just may. But since my other channel got deleted and a lot of people got a chance to see these games, but there's a lot of new subscribers and there's a lot of new awesome people out there that might get a kick out of some of these games that I have started. So let's get to it. The very first one, and I want to start this video off with a bang, and that is Top Secret. It's a top secret project. No, it's Bionic Commando 2 Top Secret Edition. And what that means is, I know Bionic Commando has been remade before many times, and there was things I liked about the remakes and some things that I didn't like about it. I didn't like all the new school graphics that got put into it. I wanted to make an actual sequel to Bionic Commando that was a direct sequel, not a remake, and I wanted it to have that Nintendo type feel. So if a sequel actually did come out on Nintendo, I wanted it to feel more like that. Now, there is a fact about the original Bionic Commando for the NES that you may not know, and that is that much of it was censored. Okay, the Famicom version, the Japanese version, was not censored. So you have a whole bunch of evil soldiers from World War II and a very evil dictator that we cannot say their names. Don't type them in the comments either down below, or you will get canceled. I hate this censor stuff they have on YouTube because it's making language a lot more difficult to talk about. This is part of history, and that you can't say it because of political reasons is really annoying. But anyway, you know who they are. And I thought that was very bold at the time as well, to have these real life characters of history in a video game. So, but they got rid of all the symbolism, they changed all the names and everything like that. And they could have picked anybody they want. They could have been aliens for sakes, but like they didn't. They actually picked these actual characters of history. It was really cool to me. So it operates the same way, and one of the reasons why I made the game too wasn't just because I was a major Bionic Commando fan, the original one back in the day when I was a kid, but I just wanted to actually challenge myself and see if I could actually get that grappling hook mechanics to actually work in the game. And I did, but it wasn't easy, folks. I know I make it look easy, but it's not. A lot of sleepless nights and a lot of practice, trial and error went into that. But anyway, I wanted some of the original weapons. I wanted to beef them up a little bit, etc., etc. And I added a jump in the game. Now I know there's a jump in another Bionic Commando remake of it, but one thing was that in the original one, I didn't like the feel of that you were always just stuck to the ground. So I did put a jump in. Now it's not really much of a jump. It's a little like hop and he spins in the air, but it just gives you that little extra tweak, you know what I mean? Like, so you can jump over little barrels and obstacles that are in your way now, rather than having, in the original you had to swing over them. And it was a little bit clunky sometimes, or sometimes you want to jump and just get that little extra distance, and then you can use your bionic arm to cling on to things. Now, you travel around the map just like you do in the original one in your helicopter, but I took out those, what are they, trucks? Those trucks that roam around all over the place, and then you ran into them. It was really weird in the original one because it didn't make much sense. Then it would go to a top-down view mode that had nothing to do with the original game, and it was, you sort of played it like the original Commando, and then you ran into a truck at the end, and then you went your helicopter again. So I was like, forget all that. You don't need any of that in the game anymore. It doesn't add anything to it at all. So you can travel around the whole map. As you can see, the map is not completed yet, of course, because this game is not completed at all. But my plan of it was to make it like Metroidvania, where certain stages, just like the original, you couldn't get through unless you had specific paperwork to get past guard posts, or you needed a specific weapon or an item to get through. So I'm pretty sure that's all there is. I'm sure there's some more, but I can't think about it at the time. You have the same types of bosses in the game and the same type of boss levels in the game as well, but I just wanted to add more to it, so it feels a lot like the original, just with more substance. The next one is actually a completely new IP of all of my own creation and my own imagination. This is not a copy of any game at all. So it's inspired. It's called the Divine Comedy, after the original Divine Comedy, that is the actual story, the book, and then of course Dante's Inferno. So it's sort of inspired by Dante's Inferno and, I don't know, Symphony of the Night, because I wanted to make like a full Metroidvania type of game, but I wanted to make it all of my own. So I just called it Divine Comedy. I mean, the title could change in the future, but like I said, it's not completed, but it plays just like Symphony of the Night, except that you actually have a cross like Dante's Inferno, and you actually play Dante, except not this beefed up Dante that they had in the Inferno version. For what was it? I can't remember. It was for Xbox, right? And no, this is the original one. So I wanted to make him look like he was in the actual story itself. So he's got his robes and stuff like that. But he does have weapons and different swords and stuff that you can get. And he's got his holy cross that can shoot actual holy, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Holy cross or holy bolts out of it, just like Dante's Inferno, as a matter of fact, but it's all a side scroller, right? And those are pretty much the only similarities, because the other similarities are more of like Symphony of the Night. So in order to progress throughout the game, you can actually transform into different creatures. So you can transform into a little rat so that you can get into these little areas where only a rat could get into, or you could call him a mouse. He transforms into a mouse, whatever you want to say. Eventually, he will be able to transform into other animals as well in order to progress through what is essentially all the circles of hell. But it's essentially Symphony of the Night. I guess that's why I didn't really get back to it, because I found too much similarities between the two. But there's a lot of Metroidvania games out there that you could say are basically a copy of Symphony of the Night, but they got their own style attached to them, right? So there's not really much I can say about it other than that, because there's not really much to it, and I think that's why I didn't really get back to it. I couldn't think of anything like you can transform into different animals and stuff, even Symphony of the Night. So there was too many similarities there for me to really want to get it out. And because it's an original IP, most people, contrary to popular belief, unless you have a massive marketing campaign and sink a lot of money into that you're coming out with a new game, lots of people won't know about it, lots of people won't play it, lots of people won't care about it. They only mostly care about the remakes that I make that are already have the reputation and the name behind it, like Castlevania, for example. So that's the Divine Comedy. Now, the next one I was making was because I never made an actual top-down mode game, if you want to call it like that, like a Commando style or an Akari Warrior style, whatever. And that is Fester's Quest. Lots of people actually recommended this game. I didn't think of it of my own. This was just from the comments section. Constantly there being one or two in every single video that I would create, and they'd be like, remake Fester's Quest, remake Fester's Quest. So I was like, well, it doesn't seem too difficult. I'll give it a try, and try and improve it as best I can. And I did, you know what I mean? I think it plays a lot better than the original one does. It's not that complicated. It's pretty simplistic like the original, except that I was making it so that your guns progress throughout the game, so they don't just randomly drop. I wanted to make it so you actually had to get your guns powered up, and they didn't. I think in the original one there was a problem where it hit walls and stuff. There's a lot of problems with the original one, and I just wanted to go through all of them and just address all of those problems. You can also save your game. There are these save game stations that are all over the top map. I also wanted to take out that really bad what was it, like 3D maze looking clicking part, whatever you want to call it. They just don't work on Nintendo very well. I never did like them. Most people don't like them, so I said take that out. Those should be actual dedicated dungeons. That's what I was gonna make. So I was gonna make it a whole big huge mazy type labyrinth that you have to go through, sort of like the original when you're like in the sewers or whatever. But it's just part of the game. It's sort of just like a rat in a maze type of game. So I just wanted to emphasize more on that. So the weapons are better, of course. The dynamite, the missiles, like all the items that you get are better as well. But it still operates and still feels like the original a lot. And of course, I would put all the bosses in, maybe tweak their AI, make them a little bit more unique rather than just so generic about what they do. And that's about it. So, Fester's Quest is still on the back burner. If I ever did get around to any of these games again, I think that's the one that I would concentrate on next, because lots of people have recommended it. They like it. And I think the game flows very well, and I don't think it would take me that long to complete it either. So there's Fester's Quest. All right, this next one, we're getting silly now, okay? And the next one's even more sillier, but this one is just because it's a childhood memory of this game, and it's for Sega Genesis, and it's called Sword of Sodan. Now, a lot of people have not heard about this game. I tried to actually get my buddy Seth to play it and make a video about it. He hated it. He despised it. He's just like, I don't even know why you recommended this to me. He couldn't even pass the first 5 seconds of this game. It was so bad. And it is a bad game, but there was something about it back in the day. We didn't have, my cousins, they didn't have a whole huge library of Sega Genesis games, but this game was always lying around, and I think that there was something about it that was challenging to me, that it was so hard. I was like, this game can't be that bad. I was like, we just need more practice, and we need to learn how to play it more. That's what I thought. I wasn't blaming the game, I was blaming us. But it is sort of the game's fault. But when you get more into it and you learn how to combine the potions together and stuff like that, it's intriguing, and it kept intriguing me, and it intrigued us because of the gore that was in it, that you could actually chop the guys' heads off. There was a lot of blood and stuff like that, and it was just a weird, obscure game. There's something about weird, obscure things, I think, that intrigue me, especially when it comes to games. Especially that one. It's like a weird, obscure movie. You know what I mean? You just can't really avoid it. And you're just like, this thing exists, right? So I had to remake it, and so I was a prime candidate. Let's fix all the problems. Let's make the jumping, the movement better in it. The jumping in the air is better in it. Everything like that. But it still resembles and plays like the original as well. I didn't want to completely ruin the experience from it, but when you make it in the original to certain parts, it's just way impossible, especially those pits that you can't see, and they position these big giant soldiers right on the other side of it that just instantly knock you into it. It's really, really bad layout. It's not bad programming, it's just really bad level layout, because those pits just kill you immediately. It's terrible, but it had the potential to be remade. But it's still silly. My version is still silly, and that one wouldn't even take me long to complete. But there you go again. I don't think a lot of people want to play it because they'd be like, what the hell is this thing? We never heard of no Sword of Sodan, and we would always make fun of it back in the day as well. That's why I wanted it to kind of redeem itself. So we're still on the silliness. I'm sorry, but yeah, I've got to get this one out there. Lots of people have asked about it though, so I don't know. And that is my Kung Fu remake, right? So I gave it a funky name. I don't know what. I wasn't high and I wasn't drunk or anything. I just felt like I wanted a break from all this serious game creating, and I was just like, I'm just gonna pile everything all together. And I was kind of getting inspired from people have made, there are older videos about it. You can watch these Kung Fu videos being made, and certain other video game franchises pop in against Kung Fu, and all this weird stuff happens. You can watch them to see what I mean. So I got inspired by those. I'm like, why don't I just make a game? People make videos about it. Well, why don't I just make the game about it and mash a whole bunch of NES games together with Kung Fu? So it starts off like the original Kung Fu for NES. But then once you make it to stage 2, it'll have more of a Super Mario Brothers theme to it. And then you actually have to fight Mario at the end. And then every time you make it up another stage of this, I don't know what it is. It's like a Japanese hotel or something. I can't remember what it was. This is like a Japanese base or castle or something in the original. But anytime you make it to a new level, I wanted it to be a new game theme. So the next one up from that was going to be Double Dragon. And then the next one up from that might be Contra. Next one up from that, it could be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's like whatever. Just pick a whole bunch of games and just keep going through all the levels until you go through all of them. You know, you could have Street Fighter in there. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like that. You're mean, my imagination was just kind of going berserk with that one. And like I said, you play it like Kung Fu, but you have a power meter, and when you get the power meter to the top, you can do like this super duper Kung Fu combo move that whoever gets in the way of that it gets absolutely trashed. And like even the final move even makes them explode, and there's guts and blood that go all over the wall. I don't know. Like I said, people say they're intrigued by it whenever sometimes they see it. It's on my website at the bottom. There's a little video of it, so it's kind of like a little, I don't know, like a little teaser or Easter egg or hidden thing, and then people ask about it all the time. So yeah, that's my crazy Kung Fu one. That one would take a lot longer though to develop than some of the other ones, like I said, because I have to do every single level as a different video game franchise. Sort of like, it was like a Bobo's Revenge in a way. I think that inspired me as well, because it's just a combination of a bunch of games put into it. So yeah, that's Kung Fu. And another one that gets asked about as well a few times, not all the time, but I have shown it off, and that is my Splatterhouse remake. And it's good, but it's difficult for me to explain why I've never gotten back to it. It's because I think that game has the most animation that I've ever put in any game, because you don't understand when you are getting into an area where it's not Nintendo, where you just shoot a guy or you hit a guy and he kind of just like explodes and then that's it, it's done. With Splatterhouse, there's so much more into it, because if you hit the guy, if you chop the guy, okay, with your meat cleaver, you gotta make his head pop off, and you gotta make his body fall on the ground and dissolve, and you gotta make that head hit somewhere. When you hit him with the 2x4, he's gotta have his whole body splatter against the backdrop. Or when you shoot him, you gotta shoot him with a shotgun, they've gotta explode. There's tons of animation in this game. It's very, very tedious, and it's the most animated, heavy game that I've ever created, and I think that's why I sort of put it on the back burner. And also because I wanted it to feel, I didn't want Splatterhouse to be like a beat 'em up. They were just going like, part 3 went into a beat 'em up, and then, you know, the newer one was essentially as well. I wanted to capture the original feel of the original arcade, and then of course part 2. It's just a side scroller, but your character is quite big. Most side scrolling characters are small, and then the level is huge, right? Where Rick is actually a big character on the screen, and there's a big heads up display. He doesn't have a lot of movement to move around in, and I think that's what I liked about it. And so I was just working with it some more, and I wanted to make it where, you know, if you haven't played the original arcade version, when you make it to the actual Splatterhouse, okay, you can go up stages and down stages. You can choose where you want to go throughout the house. You can choose your route, right? And so I wanted to make it like that, but only through the whole game. I wanted to make it where you could choose what way you wanted to go through all the stages, to give it, I think, more replay value and more exploration. Also, they changed the mask on, I mentioned this in TurboGrafx 16 video, they changed the mask from the actual hockey looking mask on the Japanese version to this red looking sort of demon mask that we had on our version. So I kind of wanted to implement those two things in the game as well, so you can get that demon mask and it powers Rick up, and he can fire these like soul bolts, these soul energy balls kind of out of it, which he did do at the end of the arcade, but I wanted to make it more of like a weapon, you know, and it hits the zombies and it hits enemies and it causes them to explode. That's just one thing I added. There were other things I wanted to add, and I wanted to add different masks to the game, and I wanted to add all the different weapons that were in part 1 and part 2 in the game as well, right? So it's really cool. I've always been a huge Splatterhouse fan, always since the arcade. It's one of the most eeriest game experiences I've ever had in my entire life. There's just something about that game that just, it's very, very, it's not that it's just bizarre, it's depressing, like it doesn't have a happy ending, etc., etc. I'm just not used to any of that. We're always used to, hey, your princess is in another castle, oh, rescue the princess, hey, way to go Mario, happy ending, yada yada yada. This one, no. Splatterhouse is really dark and bleak. You know what I'm saying? And there was always that part at the end where the mask blew up and the pieces were on the ground in the arcade. But if you waited long enough and the credits would roll by, there was a hidden message at the end, and those pieces would form up again and form the mask again, and you would hear that hideous, just bone-chilling laughter at the end. And I was like, that's why it has to continue on, because the terror mask never dies, right? So that's Splatterhouse. It's a pretty cool game. I really do want to get back to that one. So that's it. Those are all of my games that you haven't seen, that are not completed yet. I hope you did enjoy that. I hope you did enjoy them. And if you did, hit the thumbs up button. Again, if you do want to see another game that I am remaking, then click over here, of course, as always. And if you want to subscribe, click the little bubble over here and subscribe. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you next time.